Craig.
Hi, Craig.
Hello, Gregory.
Hello, and welcome back to the paddock. Since we have a short break between races, we knew we had to do a spotlight on our fashion prince, one and only Zhou Guanyu. On the episode today, we have Ito, Chelsea, and myself, Amy. We're going to kick things off with a little background on his life and his start in karting.
So let's start off with a little background on our first and only Chinese Formula One driver, Zhou Guanyu. Now, to start us, I wanted to let you know my new favorite fact. And this is that his given name is actually Guanyu. In case you didn't know, Zhou is actually his family name. Now, creating history in China as their first driver, I'm going to call him Z this episode. He was born in Shanghai in 1999 and began racing when he was just 8 years old, starting out in karting, which, don't worry, Amy's going to tell us more about. But as a business owner, it was actually his father that helped him get into this hobby because he built a professional karting track for him to practice racing, which was located in Shandong. It's a province, and it's about 2-hour flight away from Shanghai. Now, during his teen racing years, which we'll cover in a bit, he also began attending English school after moving to Europe and was quoted sharing, "In the schools, there were no Chinese people there. I was the only one and they couldn't speak my language, so I had to force myself to learn it quickly." And I think that in his hardship and the way that he works through everything that he has to go through, you're going to see it on the course as well. He is known as being someone who has his goals and gets to it. And while there isn't too much information online about the Zhou family, taking just that moment, you can tell Z was known to be hardworking, and he was someone to follow as his journey ended up showcasing a career with promise, at least in the junior leagues.
Now, his karting experience started when his parents took him to a nearby karting track, and he was instantly fascinated by the adrenaline of it and wanted to pursue a career in racing. At the age of 8, Zhou began competing in go-karting, and after 3 years of racing in Tokyo, his family relocated to Sheffield, England in 2012 for a more competitive racing environment where he joined the Strawberry Racing Team. It's a really cute team name, I have to just say that out loud. The 2012 season for Zhou, he finished in 6th in the Rotex Junior category at the Kartmasters British Grand Prix, and his breakthrough year in karting was in 2013. He won 2 of the most prestigious competitions in the sport, the Super 1 National Rotex Max Junior Championship and the Rotex Max Euro Challenge. His final year of karting in 2014, Zhou finished 2nd in the Rotex Masters Senior Euro Challenge and raced in selected rounds of the WSK Championships Cup and the KF2 European Championship. That year, he also made his only appearance in the Karting World Championship, driving for Ricky Flynn Motorsport alongside Lando Norris and Jehan Daruvala. Scouts and talent spotters in the industry took notice of his talent, and with his dream to make it into F1, was fortunate to join the Ferrari Driver Academy later that year.
And he had a pretty promising time at the Ferrari Academy because after that, we saw Z at 15 get picked up by the Prema Power Team for the 2015 Italian F4 Championship. He did get to prepare for his first single-seater season, though, and that was finishing 2 races in the Italian F4 Adria Winter Trophy, finishing on the podium each time. I feel like the Prema team was just the right fit for him because with this team, he was able to get consistent podiums, achieve 3 race wins in round 2, and end the season as vice champion with a reward for best rookie. We also can't forget to mention that he was able to achieve 2 podium finishes in Spielberg and Spa after competing in a few select rounds of the German ADAC F4 Championship during the same year.
And those achievements meant that he graduated from Formula 4 after the 2015 season. Zhou joined Team Motopark for his first F3 season in 2016. After a successful start to the season in Paul Richard and the Hungaroring, when he finished on the podium twice, Zhou struggled to find pace during the second half of the season, finishing in 13th out of 32 drivers for his maiden season. which isn't bad considering it was his first season in F3, but expectations were high regardless after his time in France and Hungary. In 2017, Zhou stayed in F3 but rejoined his F4 team Prema, which turned out to be a good move as he added another 5 podium finishes to his resume and improved his standing by 5 places. All thanks to performances like leading race 3 in Spa and defending against now fellow F1 driver Lando Norris in the last round at the Red Bull Ring. While there was a chance he would move to F2 after his 2017 performance, he ultimately did another year in F3 with Prema, taking home his first win in Pau, a podium in Hungary, and podiuming at all 3 races in Zandvoort, among a generally strong performance. All this meant that he was second just before the summer break. However, similarly to his first season, he couldn't continue at the same level after the break, suffering 4 consecutive retirements due to things like collisions with teammates, punctures, and more. Thankfully, though, he was able to bring home a win at the last round in Hockenheim. That mixed bag of results sadly meant that he once again finished 8th in the standings with 3 poles and 2 wins.
Now, in December of 2018, it was announced that Zhou was going to be joining the UNI Virtuosi racing team alongside teammate Luca Giotti, the 2019 FIA Formula 2 season. He actually got his maiden victory in Barcelona after a strong quali and leading most of the race. Following that, he actually was in the top 10 for 20 out of 24 races, 5 of them being top 3. Ended up finishing the 2019 season as the F2's leading rookie, where he got 7th in the championship and was awarded the Antoine Hubert Award, being the highest finishing rookie.
And I think he just felt like continuing that success because in 2020, we saw him driving for Abu Dhabi Racing by Prema, and Z joined the F3 Asian Championship. And his goal here was to keep pushing for those super points needed to make his way onto the Formula One grid. Now, out of everyone on this grid and the championship, Z was the most experienced, and I think it was because of this that he ended up being such a crowd favorite. After taking 4 wins in 15 races, he was able to beat out runner-up Pierre-Louis Chevaux from France. So why would he race during his break? Well, in case you didn't know, the F3 Asian Championship runs over the European winter. So what this does is allows drivers to compete in 2 series in 1 calendar year. And with those extra races under their belt, thanks to these series, drivers like Z can accumulate extra FIA Super license points and build their way onto the F1 grid a little faster. For example, this series allocated 18 of the 40 points needed to qualify as an F1 race driver due to his winning the championship. And with the high of winning the F3 Asian Championship, it was time to take on F2 again.
Now, for the 2020 Formula 2 season, we saw Zhou stay with Virtuosi Racing, but he had a new teammate with Callum Ilott. Overall, he had an incredible season, being in the top 10 for 18 out of the 24 races for the season. I think a highlight of his season was the Sochi race, where he obtained his first F2 race win, getting first place. With that being said, 2020 was a really solid year for Zhou, with him getting 1 win and 6 podiums overall. He ended up finishing the season in 6th place in the championship.
And just like in F3, Zhou decided to do 3 seasons in F2, meaning that for 2021, he partnered current Aston Martin reserve driver Felipe Drugovich. Starting off strong with pole and his first feature race win in Bahrain, a sprint race win in Monaco, and a podium in the Baku Sprint. Sadly, these achievements were followed by a couple of disappointing races, such as the collision with Dan Ticktum in the Baku feature race due to a brake failure and a spin during the sprint at Silverstone. All this meant that he lost the lead of the championship to Oscar Piastri. Thankfully, though, he was able to somewhat save the British GP weekend by winning the feature race. carrying that good fortune onto Monza by ending up on the second step of the podium twice, but losing out to Thierry Pourchaire and Oscar respectively. However, as we've somewhat come to expect with Zhou, his good luck doesn't seem to last, as these podiums were followed by a sixth-place finish in Sochi thanks to a spin, causing him to lose even more ground in the standings, as the gap to Piastri in P1 was now 36 points. Sadly, he couldn't even hang on to P2 for long due to a spin with Christian Lundgaard in the first sprint at Jeddah. Thankfully, though, Abu Dhabi saw him go out with a bang, and he won his second sprint race.
Now, for 2022, it was announced that Zhou was going to be an Alfa Romeo driver, and he was quoted as saying his entry in the series would be a breakthrough for Chinese motorsport history, as it wasn't really big or well known in China. The season opener in Bahrain couldn't have gone any better for him, with him finishing in 10th to become the 66th driver to score points on his debut race, and getting further points finishes in Canada and Italy to follow. However, Zhou's season will most likely be remembered for a horrific crash at the start of the British Grand Prix, where his car was tipped into a spin and overturned, skidding upside down at a high speed. His head was extremely close to the tarmac as his car hurtled towards the barrier and finally wedged itself sideways between that and the catch fencing. Yet despite the horrific crash, Zhou unbelievably emerged and was unharmed. You could also see George Russell running to the barrier and calling for help to ensure Zhou's safety. Zhou finished the year way behind his teammate Valtteri Bottas in the championship standings. He ended up placing 18th in the Drivers' Championship with 6 points overall. While he hoped for more, it was a decent start to his Formula One career, where he got his footing in place and dealt with a traumatic crash.
And as he's making his way back into the season this year, many of us still think about the crash that Z experienced, with George trailing him to make sure he was okay. I think DTS basically made their whole last season out of it. But 2023 has been a safer one for the Alfa Romeo drivers. And Z was praised by the last principal, Fred, on why he was offered to stay for this season, stating that he is a very nice guy. Everyone in the team liked both his personality and his attitude. He has had the humility to ask questions and learn from the engineers as well as Valtteri, and the intelligence to apply all the information he got to improve race after race. Currently, this season, Z's highest placement has been P9 at Australia and Spain. Commonly, he seems to stay around like 13th to 16th place. He's also suffered 2 DNFs at Azerbaijan and the Netherlands. Now, currently, he's holding 16th in the championship, and I'm just hoping to see upgrades on Alfa Romeo's part as they keep pushing for more of a midfield season, and for both drivers to keep working with one another, because I just want them to try and maintain both their contracts. Right now, Z doesn't have a contract for the 2024 season, but he's been quoted saying, "I'm happy to be together, spending more and more years together with this team. The future is bright where the team is heading." I hope he does maintain his seat. Otherwise, FIA F2 champion and Aston Martin reserve Felipe Drogovic or Alpha protege Theo Pourchaire could have a chance of entering the grid next year. But now that we've covered most of his actual driving career and experience, let's just discuss a little bit of what Zhou does off the track.
Yeah, and I mean, off track, we all know that Lewis Hamilton is the fashion king of the F1 paddock. However, ever since Zhou set foot in the F1 paddock in Bahrain in 2022, it seems like there might be a battle for that crown brewing, dare I say. He can be quoted as saying he uses fashion as a means of self-expression within the sport. He mentioned that his interest in fashion has grown significantly since entering F1, and honestly, it can't, like, if you look at the pictures, there is a definite progression, so I would have to agree. And he also said his interest has grown so much that he can see himself working in fashion after he's done with F1, which, fingers crossed, isn't after this season. He often acknowledges that he is inspired by Lewis. However, Zhou prefers to create his outfits himself, whereas Lewis often works with stylists, and Zhou occasionally also incorporates suggestions from sponsors. He's also quoted in saying that he prioritizes comfort when selecting his Thursday outfits, aiming for a cool and comfortable approach, unlike Hamilton's bold and attention-grabbing fashion. Zhou's style tends to be a bit more understated, with his choice of shoes often serving as a statement piece. His goal is not necessarily to stand out, but to just be himself. And I think we can all agree that Zhou's focus on fashion has also positively impacted his public image, attracting more followers, fans, and even sponsors such as Dior and Lululemon, who appreciate this aspect of his personality. He acknowledges that not everyone may understand or appreciate his fashion choices, but he believes that that is the nature of the fashion world.
I honestly really love his fashion choices. I really look forward to the looks that he's going to put together when he comes into the paddock on a race week, because I feel like some of his looks might be a little bit more user-friendly, more everyday wearable stuff than some of Lewis's fits. While I always love Lewis's looks, a lot of them are a little bit more like high fashion feeling, not necessarily something that like the average person could wear on their way to work. And like some of Zhou's looks, I'm like, I could see somebody wearing that on the street as just like regular everyday wear, and I really love that about him.
I tell you, Amy, and honestly, it's very street style inspired, like through and through. And honestly, it's surprising that he hasn't come out with his own merch yet, even though he has a website where you can sign up to be notified that something is coming, but they don't tell you what it is. Let's hope it's merch. Anyone else? Because I could totally see him pulling a Danny Rick and going full, not necessarily enchante, but basically have his line have a similar impact to what enchante has had.
I will say though, Enchante, as much as I love Danny, is very basic. It is a t-shirt, it's shorts, it's usually a solid color. Maybe it has a design on the back. It's usually printed. I don't even think it's inked on because this feels printed. I mean, this feels like almost. I'm wearing a Danny shirt right now as we're having this conversation, just for anyone listening. So I'm literally like, I can give you a firsthand review right now. It is a wonderful material, but it is very basic. And I feel like if Zhou were to do his own line, I'm not saying it would be more high-end fashion like Lewis, but it would definitely be more of a streetwear, maybe more graphic style, maybe more fabric choices, maybe different. I feel like he would even play with like fabric material. Like he would use leather, he would use jean and things like that. And as much as I love Danny, his fan base, we're basic girlies, you know? We love our pumpkin spice lattes and we are excited to wear very cute pastels. I feel like if Zhou does a line, his marketing is going to be going towards a very different area. And it might even be more Asian focused, just because that is his really niche, because he's their first F1 driver.
I mean, I have to agree. I can so see him using different textures and different fabrics and mixing fabrics. Also, if we go off of any of his past helmet designs, I feel like he's going to be the one who gives us range with just the styles, because his helmets give so much range, whereas like as the Danny Rick girly, or as one of the Danny Rick girlies who has a boatload of his merch, his stuff is very predictable to who he is. But Zhou, I feel like, would give us just way more variety. I could see him doing some really cool jackets. I could so see him being one of the Formula One drivers to actually give us race jacket style, that like kind of like how Nick DeVries had that racing jacket that he did for his merch line. I could see Zhou doing something very similar for his own line. I also wouldn't want to see the price tag for that because I'd cry, but it'd be something I could see him doing.
I mean, I totally agree. And honestly, when I think of Zhou and his whole vibe, I almost want to say it's like off-white, but also like Korean slash Japanese, like izumiyaki, like stuff like that. I'm going full fashion school girly on here, so sorry, but honestly, I could just see him going wild, and like I could see him doing like, I don't know, down jackets, like everything, honestly. And honestly, I would be all over it.
So are you saying you see more like a K-pop streetwear style?
Basically, yes.
Because you said Korean, the only thing that I think of, at least now when it comes to like Korean fashion, is I just think straight K-pop.
In essence, yes. Because like they have both Korean fashion more so than Japanese fashion, but Zhou in general, like how he dresses, is very baggy, very oversized, etc., which is more, dare I say, Korean than Japanese, even though Japanese is known for their like tailoring and stuff, but they're more so known for like their intricate tailoring rather than just oversized.
Well, I mean, I think if anything, he would go more towards like Chinese streetwear, which is because, it's like where he's from, which is more like they have almost like a hip hop outfit kind of vibe. They wear a lot of kind of like bright colors. They're very into brands. I don't know if like anyone else has noticed that, but they're very into brands. And they also use a lot of contrast. So like if they're wearing a really bright green top, I noticed they'll wear like white pants, or they'll do like a lot of different fabrics together and really know how to mix it well, because some people can't mix patterns. Doesn't always look good. I feel like Chinese fashion does a lot of mixing patterns. It's very popular, especially with the florals that they use and things like that. So I would love to see the idea of it, just because I feel like if there's anyone that can do it well, it would be someone like Zhou, especially because his family is a business-oriented family. Like that, I did find that out while I was doing my research. Both of his parents run some form of a car business, so he has the experience too to run a brand, and I think that could really help him. And besides his fashion, there was something I really wanted to talk about that he does off the grid that I found very special and very sweet, considering the kind of busyness I'm sure he has. But this year, Zhou was named a global ambassador for the Special Olympics. Now, if you follow Zhou on Instagram, you might have seen that he actually already met with some of the members from the Special Olympics, and he took them through the paddocks, gave them a nice tour, and really was just able to hang out with them and communicate with them, because his point in doing this and being excited to fulfill this need that the Special Olympics, you know, needed in ambassadors, was his goal is that everyone should have the opportunity to feel important, feel like they can join these sports, feel like they have a chance to also be the best, even if they aren't doing the normal journey that other people do and they have their own journey. And he wants to be there during these process and watch how these people really get to these Special Olympics. And one of the quotes that he said that I thought was really nice was, "It is a huge honor to become a global ambassador for Special Olympics. I've recently met with and watched several athletes from around the world compete. To learn more about their passion for the sport and to see the friendship and warmth that they show for their competitors in their Special Olympics family was inspiring. Everyone deserves the right to shine and fulfill their potential, and I'm thrilled to become a part of such a great sporting and inclusion movement." Now, besides being signed up as an ambassador, this is only about a 2-year contract that he has with them, so it's not a forever thing. And he did also get to take part in a Zoom meeting with other athletes and other sponsorship people that are going to become ambassadors this year as well. So I think finding this, it was just really nice to see that, this is a driver that he in himself is special. He is a number one, the first driver to do it in China. And for him, that was already hard. He understands that it's not always going to be easy to get into these sports that you love. and taking the time out of his day to make sure that these people have that opportunity. It was just a very like touching article to read, which you can find on the Special Olympics official website.
I do recommend that everybody look at the Olympics. They're an amazing organization. I've been involved with them myself. 10 out of 10 recommend getting involved with them. They're a fantastic organization, and I could go on and on and on about them, but I won't do that because that's not the point of this podcast. But I do want to pull out our crystal balls a little bit and look at what we think Zhou's future is going to be for Formula One. Where do we see him staying with Alfa Romeo? Do we see him going to another team? Do we see him going into a different series completely? I don't know what the future holds for him.
Look, my crystal ball, she's broken. She doesn't work on predictions. I doubt she's going to work right now. But I am sad to say I don't know how long I see Zhou on the grid after next year. Because as an amazing driver as he is, like we talked about it in the show, he was winning championships like very consistently. It was like Formula One just was a wall. And he's either maybe on the wrong team, because we do have to acknowledge Alfa Romeo does not have the number 1 car or number 5 car on the grid right now. And we also need to acknowledge maybe he just went too fast. Like he did do those extra seasons to get those points faster than he was supposed to. Like we acknowledged that in the episode. And as much as I understand drivers having this gun-ho attitude that I need to be an F1, especially in his case that he needed to be the first. He wanted to be the first Chinese driver. Sometimes, just sometimes, I think drivers pull the mark a little too quickly. And that's why we have situations where, sure, we have amazing drivers like Nick DeVries, or we have really good drivers like Logan who did really good off the Formula One grid. So maybe for someone like Zhou, he would have a much more fulfilling career in like another series, whether that's IndyCar, Le Mans, whatever it is. Maybe even like rally if he wants to have fun. I don't know if Formula One might be the one that's going to fulfill that. I don't want to say number 1 need, because if you read the articles, he doesn't feel like he needs to be number 1. But I don't know if it's going to fulfill that love of the sport he has if he's going to constantly be in the back of the track.
And I mean, honestly, I have to agree, Chelsea, because as much as it pains me to say, I feel like he, like other drivers, I mean, as you said, we've seen it before. Formula One is not for everyone. And just because you did well in the lower formulas or you did well in Formula E does not necessarily translate, because those series are spec car series, whereas Formula One is an engineering championship as much as it is a driver's championship. And a bad car can wreck your career or your season. And I want him to have more time, honestly. But at the same time, there's so much promising young talent coming up. Like, if we look at Formula 2 right now, there's so much promise there. So I do not know whether he will stay.
Now, you mentioned Formula E, and that just got like the wheels in my head turning. I would love to see him in Formula E. I think that could be really good for him. I don't know where he'd go. I don't know what team he'd go to, but I would really love to see him in Formula E. And I feel like I keep saying that about everybody who like takes a step back from Formula One, that I'm like, oh, go to Formula E. I like Formula E. I think it's super freaking cool. And I think it could be a good fit for him. I don't see him doing WEC or like endurance. That doesn't really, I don't know if that's something that would ever interest him, but it'd be cool. I mean, I also wouldn't complain to see him go rally and do like full-fledged rally racing, but I don't know. There's so many different ways he could go if he wants to still race but not be in Formula One.
I might be wrong, but isn't there a China racing team in Formula E? Because if that's the case, he can maybe contact some people back from home, be like, hey, Dad, call your business friends, anyone knowing, hiring.
So China racing, if I'm remembering this correctly, is I think now it's Neo 333. They're based in Oxford, UK. So I don't really know if there's actually ties to China. I don't know. I know one of their current drivers or driver in the past was Nelson Piquet Jr. That's like the only thing I know about Neo 333, if I'm being really honest.
So it is based in the UK, but it is owned and managed by companies in China and Hong Kong. So that's what the difference is. It just so you guys know, it's owned by Li Sheng Sports and Gusto Engineering, respectively. So it is a China-based team, just not based there.
And they actually have currently one of their driver is Dan Ticktum, someone that we mentioned. So will we see a reunion, maybe, if he decides to go that route? Just a thought.
I will say, and we kind of already said this, it could be the car. I love AR. I do, but they don't have the best car, and there's no other way to go about that. What if we saw Zhou not get in another team, because at this point we know it's not really a possibility with how the grid's looking, but just test drive a Ferrari, test drive a Red Bull, just to see what kind of, I don't know, speed he could do, like timing, because we saw what he could do on spec racing, consistent winner. So maybe if he had a good car, consistent winner.
Ferrari and Alpha have the relationship, so why not Ferrari? Get him in a Ferrari.
We're such nerds. He was also a junior for Ferrari. He at least to test drive it, at least to try it. Prema Power Team was I think his ace team. Like every time he was with them, he was good to go. So obviously Prema, Ferrari, all those connections. Maybe he should have been a Ferrari boy.
I don't know whether you guys ever saw this video, but there's this video of him and Charles and one other person in a gym dabbing. Amy knows what I'm talking about. Yes, exactly, Chelsea. And if we could recreate that, maybe. I mean, if he were to drive for Ferrari all of a sudden, why not recreate that video? Just saying.
I almost wanted to see him stay with Alpha for when Alpha becomes Audi. I mean, maybe when Audi comes in, they'll get their engineering-ish together and the car will actually have some freaking pace. Girl can dream. But I really honestly want to see him stay with Alpha and stay with Valtteri Bottas. I think that pairing is really good. I think they complement each other really nicely. And I'm not ready to see that little bromance, whatever that is, break up anytime soon. I am so here for that pairing. It's really cute and I just think they're good together. So Alpha, if you're listening, don't break the band up yet, please.
And I mean, we can make so many predictions on this, like where it's going to go, where he's going to go. But at the end of the day, we're just happy he's on the grid right now. So good luck to him, man. I'm really hoping the rest of the season goes well and that we either get points or maybe even a little shout out podium so he can get that contract for next year. Hold it in. However, this is closing time for the episode, guys, and you ain't got to go home, but we do got to get out of here.
Now, if you've been listening to us for a while, you know that we all love doing our pre-outros for our episodes, and this episode, we have to do a driver quote, and that is Zhou's quote in reference to becoming the first Chinese driver on the grid. And he said, "I want to be successful. It's important to be the first in certain areas." And he's not wrong. It is nice to be the first of something or anything. So I understand where he's coming from.
And personally, as one of my favorite drivers, I loved getting to learn more and talk about Zhou with the girls. So listeners, what do you guys think is in store for his future? Because I'm guessing another year with Alpha and then it's a little mystery. Let us know on our socials. Everywhere we are Paddock Girls Podcast, except on Twitter. There you can find us at Paddock Girls Pod. As always, don't forget to rate, review, and share the podcast wherever you listen from, like Apple, Spotify, and TikTok. Thanks for joining us in the paddock today. We'll see you in Singapore. Bye, Craig.
Bye, Craig.
Hey, Craig.